G'day, I'm Stephen Page from Page Proven Family and Fertility Lawyers, and thank you for watching and listening to the Australian Family and Fertility Law podcast. Today I'm talking about a 12-point guide for Chinese Australians looking at doing surrogacy, and I'll go through these. Point 1, don't rely on WeChat. Just because you've found something on WeChat and everyone is talking about, let's do surrogacy here, do not rely on that. I've had to dig clients out of messes, and Chinese clients have had more than their fair share of messes when it comes to surrogacy because they relied on information they found on WeChat. Surrogacy agencies aimed at Chinese market on WeChat. Just because you've seen something on WeChat doesn't mean it's the best way to go forward. Get advice at this end. And there's my point 2. Get good legal advice here first. I am a dad through surrogacy, and I've written about surrogacy. For example, my book, When Not If, Surrogacy for Australians, and my other book, International Assisted Reproductive Technology for the American Bar Association. I've advised in over 2,000 surrogacy journeys for clients throughout Australia and last count 39 countries overseas. My first surrogacy case was way back in 1988, and it may be before you were born. The point is to get good legal advice at this end by someone who knows what they're doing with surrogacy to avoid you getting into a mess. When you are building a building, you've got to make sure that the foundations are done right. And that's really important with surrogacy. You've got to go to a lot of trouble at the beginning, and then the rest of the journey should be okay. And the illustration of that point, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. They didn't get the foundations right, and as a result, it's always been leaning. You don't want to do that with your surrogacy journey. You just want it to flow, but it just requires a bit of work at the beginning. My third point is that surrogacy is available and lawful in Australia. Now, there is a shortage of surrogates, so most people go overseas, but I've certainly acted for many clients who have undertaken surrogacy in Australia. Surrogacy is lawful in every state and a territory in Australia, so no matter where you live, if you engage in altruistic surrogacy, it's lawful here. Now, there can be restrictions on your ability to access surrogacy if you're not an Australian citizen, for example, in South Australia. But if you can do local surrogacy, then I encourage you to do that. Good local IVF clinics, not having to travel around the world, not having issues about bringing your baby home, and reduced cost. My surrogacy journey was a local journey, and I speak volumes about how great it was as compared to my clients who have to travel overseas to the ends of the earth in order to become parents. I had to travel from the suburbs into the city, not very far at all, so I was very lucky. The fourth point is that doing surrogacy outside Australia can be an offence. Queensland, New South Wales and the ACT make it plain that if you live there, and in the case of New South Wales, are domiciled there, in other words, it's your permanent place of abode, and you engage in commercial surrogacy overseas, you can commit an offence or offences. If you live in the Northern Territory, South Australia, Western Australia, you can also commit offences to do with surrogacy. And if the form of surrogacy overseas is by way of adoption, and we see that in some circumstances in some American states such as Minnesota, Iowa, Tennessee, Florida, Hawaii, then you can commit offences under our adoption laws if there's a payment relating to that adoption, and that is in every state and territory. So get good legal advice here, and make sure you don't commit an offence in undertaking surrogacy overseas. If you do commit an offence, it can, aside from any punishment you might otherwise suffer, it could prejudice your ability to obtain Australian citizenship if you're not already an Australian citizen. My fifth point is don't do surrogacy in China. I know that people do it, but there are two practical reasons for not going there. The first is it's unlawful for the doctor to participate in surrogacy. So it's perfectly lawful for you to do surrogacy, but because the doctor is committing an offence in engaging in surrogacy, what do we see happen? You don't get to meet the surrogate, except maybe 10 minutes after the child is born, for 10 minutes. That's it. You don't know who she is. She disappears into the void from where she first came. So there's a real risk that she's being exploited. And that then causes the second problem, that if you want to bring your child here, you want to show to the Australian government that you're a parent. Well, the Australian government is on to people who travel to China for surrogacy and looks at when you flew, looks at the records, what are the policies of the airlines about when women can travel, and wants to find out who is the woman who gave birth. And if you haven't been told, you can't tell. And what do we see happen? Children born to Australians of Chinese origin in China through surrogacy are stuck there. They can't get a visa to get into Australia, and they can't get Australian citizenship into Australia. The worst I saw was twins aged 5 years old, one stuck with a grandmother in Shanghai, the other stuck with the other grandmother in Beijing. Not with each other, not with their parents, and they were stateless in China. Terrible. Don't do that to yourselves. Don't go to China for surrogacy. And next one, don't do surrogacy in Cambodia. It amazes me that 9 years ago, Cambodia said no more surrogacy. We're sick of all these Chinese and other agents bringing in intended parents for surrogacy. Anyone who engages in surrogacy, we're going to pass a law to make it illegal to do surrogacy. They still haven't, but they'll get charged with people trafficking, and they did. But we're still seeing, as of late last year, early this year, women being trafficked into Cambodia to be surrogates. I presume, from what I've seen of the market there before, primarily for Chinese intended parents. Don't go there. Your child may not be able to get home. You may end up spending a long time in jail in Cambodia. Next place, number 7, don't do surrogacy in Thailand. I've had clients who've been marketed on WeChat, just like clients who are going to China and Cambodia, come to Thailand for surrogacy. Don't. Unless you fit within the very narrow parameters of Thai surrogacy, which means you've got to be married to a Thai citizen, and you're normally looking at a family member doing the surrogacy, if not someone else, and it's got to be altruistic. Don't do it. I've seen dodgy agencies say, go through a sham marriage. Don't do it. You're really inviting a world of trouble. Just don't go there. You can go to more reliable locations where it is about the same kind of cost, where you're not worried about whether you might be committing a criminal offence and potentially ending up in a Thai prison. Just don't do it. The next one, number 8, is be careful with doing surrogacy in the stands. And by that I mean Chinese surrogacy agencies are operating in 2 of the stands in Central Asia, namely Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. Surrogacy has been available in Kazakhstan for a while, and Kyrgyzstan only really since last year. I would be wary about going to these countries. I just don't know how it's going to work out. In the case of Kyrgyzstan, you'll be a pioneer. What I do know is that Chinese surrogacy agencies are targeting Chinese intended parents because, of course, it's next door. It's easy to get to, and it should be fairly easy getting home. But I would just be wary about it. Things might go wrong, and if you're coming back to Australia, it might be difficult. So I would just be wary about that. again, go back to my second point, which is get good legal advice here first, just in case. And number 9, don't be pioneers. It might sound brave, braving this new world. We're pioneers, or I'm a pioneer in this field. Great. But if you're a pioneer, it's also things can go wrong and you've got no one to look to help you fix it because, well, we didn't know how this was going to turn out, but this is how it's turned out. And I'll just give you an example. It wasn't a Chinese client, but a client of mine who decided to go to Argentina. And at the time, a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, Argentina was touted as the next big thing with surrogacy. And my client was a single man, and I said to him, yeah, it's available. Yeah, the law's there. Yes, I've spoken to my colleague over there, but you're a pioneer, therefore I don't recommend it because something could go wrong and you've got no one ahead of you that gives you a guide about how it's going. And what happened? He got stuck for 4.5 months before he could get his baby out of Argentina. And the birth certificate was a black is white document. Of course, you're saying, well, what do you mean black is white? It's either black or it's white. This document was both black and white. It said at the top of the birth certificate that he was the father of the child, and at the bottom of the birth certificate said there was no affiliation between him and the child. In other words, he was not the father of the child. The document was contradictory on its own terms. So don't be a pioneer with surrogacy. Don't go to somewhere where you are the first to go. And number 10, if you're a single man or a gay couple, expect the journey to be more complicated and plan accordingly. Most of the places in the world where surrogacy is available are geared to heterosexual couples, particularly heterosexual married couples, not to single men, not to gay couples. There are places available, but you must take care in dealing with Chinese authorities to ensure that your child can obtain Chinese citizenship. Because, well, China's not too kind towards gay people and not too kind to knowing that they've had children through surrogacy. So just got to take care. Again, go back to my second point, get good legal advice at this end. And so I'll then put you in contact with lawyers overseas who can make sure that your journey is right from the beginning, that you've built the foundations right. And number 11, if you're a Chinese citizen in Australia, always have a backup plan, because it may not be straightforward getting your child back here. So again, we've just got to make sure, building those foundations right, that if something goes wrong, we know where the child is, the child will be in your care somewhere, and where that is, and the child will not be left stateless, like those twins that I described before. And then finally, point 12, if you're an Australian citizen during surrogacy overseas, doing surrogacy overseas, planning for your surrogacy journey is easier than if you're a Chinese citizen living in Australia. It might sound obvious, but it's also true. You should have no great difficulty with care in being recognised as a parent back here. I've been privileged over the years to act for many Australian Chinese clients doing surrogacy overseas, and they've been single, they've been gay, they've been heterosexual couples. Some of them have been Chinese citizens, and some relationships, one is Australian, one is Chinese, and some of them have just been Australian citizens. But it has been an honour to act for each and every one of them, and I'm sure, I would hope that there are many more. But this is what I've learnt, and this is why I want to share this knowledge with you. Thank you for watching and listening to the Australian Family and Fertility Law Podcast. I'm Stephen Page from Page Proven Family and Fertility Lawyers.